And so we've been covering this for a while, right? It's clear that the problem in meat processing plants isn't going away. The president ordering them all to be open didn't turn out to be a panacea for keeping people from getting infected there. But beyond the situation in meat processing plants, we are now seeing more and more all over the country that other congregate work environments, other places where people work together for hours on end, particularly in manufacturing or sort of processing plants, those places are also now starting to see large outbreaks in workplaces of all different kinds. This seems to me like the next phase. You look at local news around the country and you see these reports everywhere. You start to aggregate them and you realize this is more than just a blip here and there. This appears to be sort of the next wave of the way people are way Americans are getting infected.
I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, to the 144,000 elect men, and to the 1/3 of all Israel, which includes the men, women, and children that are all coming back to these laws, statutes, and commandments in these last days. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, and also make sure that you are also hitting that notification bell so you can keep this word going out so we can bypass the algorithm and keep on doing this work, Israel. So I just wanted to give an update on the coronavirus because we are approaching the third straight month of, I guess you would say, a fluctuation in cases. And right now it appears that this place is getting pretty desperate because despite all the things that are happening in the world, there seems to be this act of desperation where all these states are considering reopening, right? Because the unemployment rate is skyrocketing. People are sitting at home. People are getting restless. People are getting tired. They're tired of staying at home. There's people who need to be working and they can't work. And that's putting pressure on the decision makers. And there seems to be conflicting ideas as to whether or not each state should open or not in comparison to what the recommendations that the government is issuing. So it appears to be that all these states are in a free-for-all, right, as far as making the decision to reopen. But the problem is there's no evidence that the coronavirus is on a downward trend. Every time they see that the numbers are decreasing one day, the following day, somewhere else, the numbers are surging. So as much as these decision makers want to reopen and save the economy, they're in a catch-22 because if they reopen and this pandemic is not contained, then what's going to happen is the problem is going to get much worse. Now, as you can see in this video, we're learning that the coronavirus is affecting the meatpacking industry, which means that food shortages are imminent when it comes to the meats that we enjoy. But what's even more fascinating about this is the nature of the coronavirus seems to be evolving. So it's not just affecting the meatpacking industry, but it's affecting all types of businesses that involve manufacturing, right? Factories, places where human interaction is required, and not just human interaction, but you need numerous amount of employees to run a factory. right? Those machines don't work themselves. Those machines rely on guidance from human beings. So think about any type of machine, right? It requires most machines have multiple parts, and each one of those parts of the machine have a specific function that makes the entire machine work, right? And if one part of that machine is unable to work, then the whole entire machine fails. So what's happening is people are going into work at these factories, and they all play an important role in the factory operating, right? But if one person gets affected with the coronavirus, who's to say that somewhere down the line in that machine, that coronavirus is not passing through each and every one of those components of the factory? So it's making it almost impossible to work in a factory because of the nature of the coronavirus. So that's what's causing people who are in the manufacturing industry to be most affected by the coronavirus, because not only are they essential workers and they need to be there, but the risk is probably the highest out of all other industries because of the nature of the business. So what are you supposed to do? You either close down the business, and that means you waste a lot of food. A lot of food won't be able to make it to the shelves because there's just no one to put them there. So I just want to bring up a few scriptures that applies to what's going on. The first one being Ecclesiastes 12:3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. So right now, the grinders are ceasing because there's just too few workers that are available, that are healthy to be able to work in these factories. So you might be one of those employees working on an assembly line with, who knows, 15, 20, 30 other people, and then you come into work and you find out that so-and-so was diagnosed with the coronavirus, and you know that the assembly line is hands-on. So if that person got the coronavirus from their job or even somewhere else, the chances become much more significant for you because you're a part of that assembly line. So in that event, you might have to quarantine, and everyone in your group or everyone in your department might have to go on quarantine just because of one person, because you're all working down the same line and you're all putting hands and, you know, passing germs down the assembly line. The assembly line becomes a factory for the coronavirus.
When they go to work. With more and more states opening up workplaces, this is what we are starting to see more and more. Today, the Denver Department of Public Health ordered the closure of a U.S. Postal Service facility. And it's not just any postal service facility. It's not like a local post office. This is a sorting facility that handles all of the mail for the entire state of Colorado and the entire state of Wyoming. The Denver Public Health Department ordered that facility shut down after workers at that facility tested positive for coronavirus and inspectors couldn't get in to see what working conditions were like. That USPS shutdown in Colorado, which could have very large consequences. That comes just one day after we learned of an outbreak at a UPS facility in Tucson, Arizona. Union officials say at least 36 workers at that UPS facility have tested positive, and 3 of them are sick enough to have been admitted to intensive care units. There have been lots of cases at Amazon warehouse facilities across the country. Already 8 employees, all working at different Amazon warehouses across the country, have died from coronavirus. In Georgia, we've been keeping our eyes on a major outbreak at a nuclear power plant, of all places. More than 230 workers have been infected at a nuclear power plant. Officials in North Dakota have been grappling with a surge in cases at a wind turbine plant. Nothing about wind turbines specifically that put you more at risk for getting the virus, but if you work in a manufacturing environment that's elbow to elbow where you're closely confined with your other workers day after day, it's just as good as anywhere. More than 140 employees at that wind turbine plant have already been infected. A beauty supply factory outside Chicago was recently forced to shut down after one of its workers died from coronavirus. There have been more than 100 cases reported at a Rhode Island facility that packages salads. Halfway across the country in Colorado, there was a cheese processing plant that was forced to shut down after a large outbreak there. I mean, you're seeing this in state after state, in all different kinds of processing and manufacturing facilities. Any place where people are working in congregate, a mushroom plant in Tennessee, a crawfish farm in Louisiana, any of a dozen or so seasonal farms across southern New Jersey. And it is reaching a boiling point for Americans who work in these environments. For the past few weeks, hundreds of fruit packing workers in Yakima Valley, Washington, have gone on strike, demanding higher wages, but also safer work conditions in terms of exposure to the virus. More than 350 agricultural workers in that area have already become infected with the virus. Yakima County, Washington. And we're seeing stories like this all across the country, day after day after day. We've started to realize as a country there's a problem in meat processing plants. But now with the country beginning to reopen, workplaces beginning to reopen, we've got to get our heads around the fact that we're seeing outbreaks in all sorts of facilities where workers work, travel, or live together in congregate. How do we begin to deal with this problem and learn to keep ourselves safe?
The last scripture I want to bring up is 2 Ezra chapter 6, verse 22. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. So what's actually happening is this place is being unsown. The coronavirus is unsowing this entire economy, first with the shutdown of all non-essential businesses. They're all working from home if they can, or they're just completely shut down. And then you have the essential workers who are going to work, a lot of them working in these high demand jobs, in these manufacturing companies, in these facilities, in these assembly lines, and they can't social distance there. So you have the rest of the population, the general population, so to speak, at home. And then you have the essential workers that are contaminating each other with the coronavirus. So now the focus and the epicenter of the coronavirus seems to be surrounding these types of businesses, right? And if there's any type of business that's in manufacturing, right, that has to do with storage. You manufacture something and then you store it. You send it off to a retailer and they store it. But if that's not happening, then guess what? That inventory is going to be low. That stock is going to be low. The storehouses are going to be suddenly found empty. And with that, I'd like to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. Let's do this work, Israel. If anybody was edified, the job has been done. And with that, I say Shalom.